And we're live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Chai Tea Tai Chi web show. I am Andrew Brown, and we're joined today by Dane Dormio. We were discussing a little bit about Qigong and breath work, and this topic came up, this distinction between what is breath holding and what is breath stretching. So, Dane, you want to just give us a little intro on those two topics?
Yes. So this distinction of breath holding versus breath stretching is relevant to anyone who is doing breath work. And breath work is a component of Qigong. It's an important component of exercise, and it's an important it's a modality in its own right. There are different breathwork techniques out there that are valuable for emotional healing, stress reduction, health, wellness, longevity, all the reasons that we engage in mind-body practices. And so in working with the breath, this distinction of breath holding versus breath stretching is an important one to make. And basically, when people hold their breath, what they're doing is constricting the airways. So it's like if you take a deep breath, fill your lungs and your diaphragm with air, and then you kind of internally squeeze off your airway so that your lungs can't close, and you hold that air in. That's how people normally hold their breath. Breath stretching is a different way of holding the breath, where it's you're essentially inhaling and opening the lungs, and then you keep holding them open. You expand the diaphragm, you keep expanding it, and rather than constricting and closing off the airway, you keep the diaphragm activated and expanded. So
okay. How I make this distinction is it sounds like instead of gulping the air, you sip on the air. Is that about right? You're just taking a little bit of air over a long period of time instead of and holding versus just slow inhale.
Well, the distinction that I'm making is not in how you're taking the breath in. It's how you're holding the breath in. And I'm saying you can either, if you once you have filled the lungs, you can then either hold the lungs full by closing off the airway from the inside, and then even if you squeeze your diaphragm, the air won't go out because you're pinching off the airway. And that's a particular sensation that you can detect. The other way to hold the breath is you can expand the lungs fully and then hold them open. You can keep the diaphragm active so that the airway stays open. You're not closing it off, but you're holding the diaphragm open. And that's as if I call that breath stretching, because it's as if you are stretching the lungs open.
All right, I think I get it. I was just trying it right now.
It's almost like if you breathe in and try to keep breathing in and in and in and in.
Yeah, exactly. So you keep trying, you're holding those valves open, like you can feel that muscle change when you release it. It's very small distinction, but you have to feel it yourself. The only way to notice it is the experience of doing that. So practice
exactly.
The breathing. Yeah,
this is a sensation you can experiment with, and you can get the sensation of closing off the airway. And this is what most people do, I think, instinctively when they hold their breath. And like when most of us experience holding our breath when we're swimming, right? And there it makes sense that you close off the airway so that nothing goes in and out, and so that's normally what we do. But this is a different way of holding the breath, where we're not closing the airway off, but we're expanding, where we're holding the diaphragm and the lungs open. And this is just a good distinction to make with breath work, and it's a particularly important distinction to make with Qigong, because normally in Qigong, sometimes we do breath stretching. We may expand and stretch the capacity of the lungs, expand the lungs open, but rarely, if ever, are we going to pinch off the airways and hold the breath closed with tension, because the aim in Qigong is always to release tension from the body rather than to create tension.
Yeah.
So it's a good rule of thumb when you're practicing Qigong or Tai Chi to always pay attention and make sure that you're not holding your breath. That's a fundamental error that we can often commit sometimes, especially like if you're standing on one leg, or if you're holding a posture. Then sometimes we just habitually will kind of hold our breath, and it's a good thing to watch for and avoid. Make sure you're not holding your breath. Make sure you're not pinching off the airway, especially. Sometimes we might stretch the breath open, and that can be good to do. But holding the breath is something that we generally want to avoid in our Qigong practice.
Well, right. Yeah, very true. I would just have to say one thing about when you're performing and you catch yourself holding a balance and you really got to stick it. Sometimes you just hold your breath for those few seconds. But yeah, that's performance. You're trying to look
right,
at
exactly. When you're trying to look a certain way, it tends to create tension in the body and cause the breath to stop. And that's just the way that we're built. So if you're practicing to release tension from the body, it's not about making it look a particular way. It's about making it feel natural on the inside. And also, breath holding can be beneficial. Like the Wim Hof method, for example, involves breath holding and other breathwork techniques. So there's a place for it, and it has its benefits as well. It's what we want to be able to do is know the difference, be able to make the distinction, and constantly choose which one we're using. Yeah.
No, I really enjoy the Wim Hof method of breath holding, or I guess you could even say it's stretching, because you're just relaxed and you don't breathe in and you don't breathe out. You're just empty after you've completely filled your body with a lot of air. You've innervated all your blood, and then now you can just empty. And just be empty for a while. Like the first time I did it was 3 minutes. I was really impressed with myself.
Yeah, well, that's one kind of place for it is after you breathe really fast for a while, and then you hold your breath, and you either relax while you're doing that, or you exert while you're doing that, like you do push-ups or you do something else where you're exerting while you're holding your breath after you breathe quickly for a long time. And that's great for building up the body's adaptive capacity in other ways. So again, it's not that one is good and the other is bad. It's that they have different functions, and hallmark of skill is using the right tool for the job. So being able to recognize the distinction and constantly be aware of whether you're breath holding or you're breath stretching, doing whichever one is appropriate. And generally with Qigong practice, make sure you're avoiding holding your breath unconsciously. That's the common defect that we want to avoid, is unconsciously holding the breath, just as a general rule. So it's a good thing to watch out for and pay attention to.
All right. Yeah. Good notes, everybody. Thanks so much, Dane, for giving that detail. Hopefully in our next practice, we can really appreciate it. So where can people find more information about this?
Yeah, so if you are interested in going deeper with your practice, learning more of these kind of secrets and tips, you're welcome to join us in our online learning community. And we look forward to having you join us on this lifelong mind-body mastery journey.
Definitely. All right. Thanks, everyone. Live long and prosper.
Peace out, everybody. Have a good night.
Bye.